Well, welcome everyone to this special Menlo Midweek where we are recapping Easter. Phil, I'm already tired thinking about it.
He is risen.
But he is risen indeed. If I'm tired, I can't imagine how Jesus might feel.
I mean, he came back on Easter in a resurrected body, so I don't think he was tired at all, actually.
Yeah, he probably felt fresh.
Yeah, the freshest he'd felt in 33 years.
Dang. What a feeling that would be.
Yeah.
I'm interested. That got my mind going someplace I'll have to tease out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, Phil, thank you so much for leading us all through what it means to encounter Jesus at the conclusion of our Cost of Connection series, as well. We've been building up to this moment for the last 7 weeks. And so we've been trudging along in what it means to the cost of following Jesus, what it means personally, professionally, with our communities. And it was just such an amazing exclamation point on this series. And I'm so grateful for pretty much, everyone that was involved in doing it as well. It was a crazy amount of things that had to happen. Intricate services. We had Good Friday as well, leading up into Easter weekend, and then all of our Easter services. So just a fun weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it is, Easter is always one of those times where in the middle of it, you have to kind of pinch yourself and go, man, this is like a crazy thing that we still have access to. And, I make this point quite often that the sort of residual of Christian influence in the West shows up uniquely at Christmas and Easter. And so even if for Easter it's a lot of people I think that are somewhat church attenders that just all come at the same time, it's a really sweet picture of, man, this is an amazing amount of energy and fun and celebration. And I think at Menlo to be able to tie in Good Friday for those that make that time happen into Easter, it's a cool week. It's full. There is no doubt about it, because normal work doesn't stop. So it's just more. But it is super worth it, and the stories that we get to hear are really powerful. Stories of spouses who are not normally church people, who sort of come with their families, which is really close to me because that was my dad's story, growing up. To people who, for whatever reason, like we heard with Jaden, God just works. I mean, works through the TikTok algorithm.
Dude, what a story!
Unreal, dude, unreal. Yes. And so, we're just. I think sometimes we can think God, we got the right strategy. We should have good strategy, and it should be prayerful. But then I think God reminds us, hey, how about I work? And you just listen and show up. And so, it was cool. It was really special. Shout out to all the teams that made it happen: campus volunteers, worship leaders, musicians, campus pastors, greeters, administrative folks behind the scenes, production staff. There's so many moving pieces, so many people who are willing to, change what their Easter looks like to be a part of this. And I remember Easter years ago, I was talking to a volunteer, and it's, long day, lots of stuff going on. And I said some version of hey, thanks so much for sacrificing what your normal Easter looks like to do this. It really makes a difference. And he goes, it's not a sacrifice when it's a blessing.
Ooh.
And I was like,
I love that.
Okay, you want to preach the next
next
time?
Right.
Let's go. So I think that was just a really fun reminder of that this weekend, and hopefully a chance for God to do something where we get to hear stories. A couple years ago, I mentioned a book called Reason for God by Tim Keller, and somebody's story who got baptized the next time around was he was coming as the spouse of someone, didn't normally come to church, read the book, God used it to connect his heart. He became a follower of Jesus and then got baptized. There's somebody pretty recently that's a story at one of our campuses. It's not quite that, but pretty close. I mentioned a book from my buddy Mark Clark, Problem of Life, and who knows, God may do that. I'm trying to always leave these breadcrumbs for people that if God piqued your interest, how can we help you pursue it?
Yeah, it's cool too because I was chatting with one of my good friends, neighbors. He grew up Catholic, doesn't really go to church now. I was kind of just trying to get him to come and sit with me at Easter. And we were hanging out the week before, And he was like, I'm sure you guys are going like above and beyond to do everything for Easter. And I said, yes, but we don't want to make it feel for someone that's coming the next week like they're coming into a completely different place with completely different service. And so that kind of piqued his interest a bit because he was just like, okay, like you guys have unchurched people in mind. He didn't use that language, but he was like, oh, so you have me in mind when you're crafting. I was like, yes, we do it for you, specifically for you.
Yeah.
So,
well, Carly and I were talking this morning, actually. Carly, shout out, new creative director.
She's great.
Crushing it. And I just talked about that, I think Easter is like this really cool reminder of what intentionality should look like. And it should be a model. You're not going to like, I mean, depending on the campus you're at and stuff, you're not going to have that level of production every single week. But I think that level of intentionality should happen every week because the things that make Easter special, you're like, well, there's unchurched people in the room. People have risked inviting. God's drawn people to it. It's kind of, sometimes people are giving God, his last shot with them. And I just said, like, if you think about it, like every Sunday is somebody's Easter.
Yeah.
Every Sunday is like all that's true for somebody every week. And so I do think that tension of how do you make Easter really special and cool, but not so different that now you're just shifting into cruise control every other week of the year. So.
Yep. I'm curious, Phil, for someone that has said that he's been preaching for 30-ish years now.
25.
Okay.
Yeah, 25 years.
How is this Easter message either different from that in the past, or what was unique about this, and why'd you pull us in this direction?
I think Easter and Christmas for me are like my two favorite sermons to give every year. Because I get to like fully focus on unchurched people with them. It's like you get to be an evangelist in a normal church setting.
Sure.
I've done like itinerant or like outside speaking in contexts where it's just full-throated evangelism. And those are really sweet, special experiences to be able to have. And in a church setting, you're pastoring your own people because they have taken a risk by inviting friends. And so you're like modeling for them what that looks like, as well as taking that trust that they've extended to you and preaching through it. So I think that's been really sweet. But I think just the challenge of how do we tell the same story in different ways every year? And it's easy to get complacent. It's easy, if you go to the same church every year, it's probably easy to be like, man, I feel like I've heard this sermon before. And so the core narrative of the resurrection or at Christmas, Jesus' birth, obviously the core narrative is the same. And there's this tension of the expectation that people come in with of like, you better talk about Jesus coming back from the dead, or you better talk about baby Jesus. And so you're sort of threading the needle of giving people enough of what they expect that they let their guard down, but enough of what they don't expect that they actually process it and they don't just, sort of check out. Yeah, like I know this, Right. And so, I just really appreciate that challenge. And I feel like the Lord's always really gracious to me to give me pretty timely personal situations, examples, or ideas that allow me to tell whatever that story is with hopefully a fresh insight that meets the needs of a community in a particular moment and feels relevant. So,
talking about your bag?
Talking about my bag, yeah.
You should have brought it in.
I should have. Actually, I should have brought it today. I should have.
Bring it at some point. I'd love to see it.
Yep.
For those that don't know what we're talking about, what bag, what is the significance behind it?
Yeah, so the backstory that I didn't tell this weekend is I have had, like a laptop bag or whatever that I carry for years and years.
It's a nice bag.
Yeah. And I think it was when I moved to Colorado, so whatever, 10 years ago now, maybe even a little bit more, the staff that I was on in Seattle, they bought me a really nice bag. It was a leather bag, cool. I really liked it. It was pretty expensive. It wasn't crazy, but I just wore it out. Like it just, so then I switched to like a backpack and used that for a number of years. But I always missed that like leather bag. I'm more of like a leather bag guy than like a backpack guy. I'm sure people are not probably wildly surprised by that. But the type of bags you go and get, there's kind of the spectrum is like on one side you can get really cool and current but probably pretty cheap and temporary, or you can get something that will last a really long time, but maybe doesn't feel as current. And there's this category of products that's called Buy It for Life, BIFL, that I started pursuing around bags. And there's this whole world of it, which is interesting, like just in terms of this is like there are people that everything they buy is Buy It for Life.
Can we just start calling that Biffle?
Biffle, yep, Biffle products. That's yeah, sure, that seems normal. And so I found this one brand that I really liked, and a set of bags that I really liked, and they were just too expensive. Still, it just didn't make sense. And so I was looking at them, and then they have a section that are basically refurbished bags, which there's like a blemish or there's some imperfection. And so it was a half price of the expensive version. Still the most expensive bag I've ever purchased in my life, but way closer to what I would normally spend. And so I bought it, and it's incredible. I mean, like so nice. You can just tell it will hold up literally forever. The top banner of the website, the motto of this company is "They'll fight over it when you're dead." And so,
morbid, Phil.
Yeah, it is. And so I sort of took that and talked about how different that is than the Silicon Valley ethos of what's the next thing, the kind of not new enough vibe, what's the next update, and talked about how even when we think about Buy It for Life, well, that's amazing, and this thing like it's built for a lifetime. That actually something that Easter reminds us of is that we're built for eternity. It's the pendulum is not temporary, disposable, or built for life. It's you're built for eternity, and Jesus came to restore that capacity to you. And so, so I hope it was helpful and that God uses it. But that was the way I brought us back to the text in Luke of Jesus' resurrection, the women finding him, Peter going back and looking for him. And you're always trying to weave the whole thing into a whole service because we had like a fun video at the beginning of the service where campus pastors are telling the Easter story. We have Jaden's story. We have worship music. There's just all this stuff that is so integrated on Easter that you want to make all of it feel like it works together.
Yeah, that's so good. And it's ultimately illustrating the point as well that like hope isn't a fad, or hope is not something that is just sought after and then gets left behind, but hope is this thing that Jesus offered for everyone for eternity.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And I think, the most dangerous form of hope is false hope, right? It's when we put our hope in the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so I think Easter is this beautiful reminder of a hope that is a forever hope rather than a, fad or for now hope. And, I think that the dirty little secret of upgrade culture is that when you get that like new iPhone, when you get that new outfit, when you get that new car, when you get that new job, when you get that new thing, there is like a chemical dopamine hit in you that's like, this is awesome, and then it fades. And I think what's so sad is it's like chasing a high that actually over the course of your life, when you're chasing false hope through materialism, through just nothing but raw experience, it actually takes more to get less over and over and over and over again. There's diminishing returns. And I think the flip side is true, that when we place our hope in Jesus and the resurrection power he provides, actually it takes less to get more hope. That the longer you're alive and the greater your maturity in Jesus, the theological term is sanctification. The greater my sanctification is, the more I can find hope even in the midst of hurt. That's what Romans 5 is all about. And so I think it's a beautiful contrast between a hope that I misplace versus a hope that can replace the hurt and pain in my life.
Yeah. Wow. This is a deep pull, but you guest spoke at a church a couple weekends ago.
Dude, that is a deep pull. We're going to Indiana right now?
We're going to Indiana, and we're talking about how you said that you're from the land where the iPhone's from. And
you listened to this sermon?
The next one's going to disappoint you.
Yes. Uh-huh.
You have some Apple people that are probably squirming right now that are listening.
And they know that it's true. Here's the thing. If you work at Apple, you know this is true. You're mad about it. You don't want it to be true, but you know it's true because here's the problem. we've like done a whole bunch of the stuff with all this technology that was like, whoa, we got rid of the home button. Like the screen's better. Oh, it's really fast. Like all the easy stuff. And so now it's like you got to put in so much energy and effort for the smallest little upgrades. You know it. You know it's going to be disappointing. And you know what? I'll still probably buy it. I think my phone now is like 3 years old, and so my battery is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's usually the point at which I have to deal with phone upgrades. And like I talked about this last weekend, I'll give my old phone with a terrible battery to one of my kids, and that'll be their upgrade. So, yes, yeah, that's funny. No, that was my setup there because I was in the Midwest and trying to introduce myself. I was speaking for a buddy, and I just said, hey, so like if you're wondering where Silicon Valley is, like if you ever tried technology and it's frustrating or an update takes too long to install or something that got sold as an upgrade feels like a downgrade, I was just like, that was us. You're welcome. And it got a laugh at every service. So
That's great.
because that's exactly how people feel.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want the listeners to know, if you're not watching this was the only time Phil spoke directly into his camera the entire time.
Yeah.
So he's passionate about something.
Yep.
Apparently more passionate about iPhones than
That's right.
sanctification.
Sure. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I think, I mean, I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for the iPhone to blow people's minds in the fall. That'd be great. But I think it's going to be like, and it's also features that I don't care about. It's like we made the camera even better. There's a fourth one. You're like, I didn't need three actually, so it's fine. Or, hey, we're gonna make it fold, and now it costs $2,000. Well, I'm not buying that one. So, but what are you gonna do?
So I'm thinking about this idea of the buy it for life, things that are built to last. We as humans are living in an interesting tension of having temporary bodies but eternal souls. And so how, Phil, as we're coming out of Easter, maybe excited, maybe for some of us for the first time in a long time, maybe trying to bring someone alongside with us, how can we help someone how can we help someone develop more of the eternal being that we are in the temporary that we are living in now?
Yeah, well, and the thing that's kind of exhausting is it's actually more nuanced and complicated than that.
I know. That was even a mouthful for me to say.
And so, there's a philosophy in the first century that Paul is regularly addressing. There's two major heresies that he's addressing in the first century as he's writing to early churches. Probably the most pronounced is in the letter to the churches in the region of Galatia. He's dealing with one, which is Judaizers that were, hey, if you want to be a Christian but you're not ethnically Jewish, you have to follow Jewish customs, including circumcision, in order to become a Christian. And then the second one was Gnosticism. Gnosticism comes from the Greek word gnosis. There's two primary words that we translate for knowledge in the New Testament from the language of Greek, which you're like, why Greek? Because that's the language it was originally written in. One is gnosko, which means I know intellectually. Gnosis is like knowledge through experience. Gnosticism pointed to this idea of secret knowledge. Like, hey, you got to really figure it out. It's going to be, this isn't understandable. You have to like really get into it if you really want to know what it is, which I think one of the cool things about Menlo is how rooted we are in spiritual formation. I think one of the shadows of spiritual formation is that it can feel a little Gnostic. That we have to be careful that we don't like, yes, it's amazing, but the basics of faith are still true, good, and helpful. And so the first century lie of Gnosticism was that that anything spiritual is good and anything physical is evil. And and so, this idea of like, how do I help someone that's trying to process this? I would say actually your body, and we did a series on this called Wonderfully Made. And the first week we just talked about the body, that actually your body is a gift. And while it is marked by sin and brokenness in our world, it is still created in the image of God with infinite dignity, value, and worth. That's not just your soul. It wasn't like God gave you this amazing soul and put it in this broken down, hoopty body. And so even the world around us, I think a disjointed sort of classic dispensational view is that sometimes the way it gets sort of thrown out there is that this world's going to all go away, that our bodies are going to go away, and that everything new is going to come. Well, the words that we see in Greek for that actually is that our bodies will be restored, and that the world will be renewed and restored.
Right.
And so we don't know what that means. It could mean actually that like God uses atoms and molecules of our current body in a forever state with him in a new heaven and a new earth where the world that we're in right now remains. There's some theologians that are like, what if there are amazing artifacts of this time that are such incredible snapshots of God's creative power in people that they actually exist in the new heaven and the new earth? Like, imagine if the Statue of Liberty is still on the new earth. You know, like God's like, we're going to keep that one. We don't know, right?
Yeah.
It feels unlikely. But I think it's important to recognize, I think the duality that we can create where like body bad, soul good. No. Our body and our soul are actually both created by God.
Yeah.
And living in a place that's integrated where who I am in my innermost, like actually that's what I was kind of preaching in Indiana, what I am on my innermost inner being in Romans 7 is actually lining up with and connective to my choices with my body in real time, as difficult and painful this side of eternity as that is.
And I think that innermost part of you is the part that is most relational to those that are around you. Like sharing that
For sure.
innermost, like let's say you brought someone to church with you this weekend and they have big questions on why does evil exist in the world? You could give them a theological answer, sure, but you could give them the answer that is closely personal to you and how you deal with that. And I'm sure God will work in that and move in that.
Yeah. I think the best answer when your unchurched friends ask you a question you don't know the answer to is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's find out together.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
maybe that's like, hey, Phil recommended that book. You want to like read it together? Like you and me, would that be helpful? Or hey, let's go Google that together. Like let's chase it. I think the thing that I am always encouraged by is that the Bible and Jesus can stand up to our scrutiny.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you've got doubts, if you have cynicism that you're bringing to this conversation, great, join the club. I mean, God's been navigating that since the foundations of the world. And I think that being able to, I mean, in the last 100 years, certainly, when we think about like quantum physics and the Big Bang Theory, the major scientific discoveries and certainly the major archaeological discoveries have actually been far more affirming and confirming towards faith than against it. And so I would just say, like, don't feel like you need to fake it or pretend you have all the answers or shield your own doubt. I think when we have people like that in our lives, if we struggle with that, we should be honest about our struggle. If we don't know, we should be honest that we don't know, and we should be open to discovery, not just for them, but with them.
Yes, absolutely. And I love how that we not only craft Easter specific in mind, like we talked about earlier, for those that are new, but also what's to come next. And so we've thought about this. We understand the leap it may have taken you as someone who's listening to this to invite someone this week as well as with the series to come. So Phil, we have a guest speaker coming in, and we have a new series specifically geared towards answering questions about what makes church weird, which I'm so excited for.
Yeah, so Jo Vitale is she's an apologist. So if you're like, I don't know what that means, they just apologize all the time.
They're so sorry.
So sorry. They must be Canadian. That was
Really great
that was
apologists
just
up
an
there.
amazing. They're all apologists. This is somebody that brings like sort of a defense to the faith, right? They can handle difficult questions. They regularly think about the faith through the lens of a skeptic. And so, Jo, she's joining us actually to preach the next 3 weekends and going to navigate 3 really important questions around worship, communion, and the Trinity. And so I think my hope is that if you're a follower of Jesus, I think one of the things that can happen in these conversations is we just stop asking why. We like go through the motions, and maybe you know a piece of why, but you've been in church long enough that you've just sort of stopped asking. And so I think it can be a fun exploration for you where she taps into questions that you never got the answer to, but you got tired of asking, so you just moved on. And then obviously, we're thinking about unchurched people or people who are, maybe just kind of digging back in a little bit to say, wouldn't it be amazing if in this series some of those objections that they had got lifted, and faith didn't have to be, quite so blind, that there's a logical, thoughtful, engaging way to approach a vision of pursuing Jesus.
Yeah.
So,
super excited about that. And Discover Menlo and Menlo Next, which are all coming up.
mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So, obviously, we talk about them all the time, but if you're like brand new at Menlo and you're listening to this podcast,
Awesome.
Well done.
Thank you.
That's amazing. And you're going, where would I find a way to discover Menlo? Well, we have an environment for you called Discover Menlo. You've heard in your life that there are no free lunches. Well, this is one of those free lunches. You're actually welcome to come to. It's not a, sort of, what's it called?
It's not like a timeshare.
Yeah, not a timeshare. That's what I was looking for. Not a timeshare presentation. We'll tell you some opportunities to get connected, but it's move at your own pace. And then Menlo Next, if you've been around for a little while and you're wondering what's next for me at Menlo, Menlo Next is the answer. It's 3 weeks where we really share our agenda with you. Like, we have an agenda for you. We want you to know what that is, and then help you identify what are some ways to get connected around here as well. So, Discover Menlo is this weekend. Menlo Next is just around the corner. I would love to have you at either one of those, depending on what you're ready for. And if you're thinking, but like summer's just around the corner and I'm not sure, that's fine. Like, I would say go to it. And even if what you're saying is, I'm ready to jump into something else this fall, great, get a head start. Because what I found is, if there's things in the spring that I push off and I go, I'll deal with that in the fall, it's easy not to deal with it. But if I do that thing in the spring and prepare my fall for it, I'm much more likely to do it. So.
Definitely. Well, Phil, thanks so much.
Of course.
Appreciate all your wisdom and just, your heart for making crazy concepts that are ridiculous at face value applicable and understandable.
Yeah, man.
Really appreciate that.
Super fun. Easter is a privilege, and looking forward to what God does next.
Thank you. And so now, what some of my favorite parts of things like Easter and Christmas is we get to hear stories from each of the campuses. So let's go ahead and bring on our next guest to continue this podcast. Harold.
Hey, what's up, Mark?
Welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, man.
I got to hang out with you and your team this past Easter.
Yep.
You guys did an amazing job. It's a couple days after that. I'm still feeling it a little bit.
Yep.
I'm sure
Same.
you are too.
Same.
I'd love to know, Harold, what is maybe a highlight from your Easter here at Menlo with us? Share something that was cool about your team, what you guys did. Floor's yours, buddy.
Awesome. Well, we had a new camera install that happened a few weeks ago.
This is at the Menlo Park campus.
At the Menlo Park campus. Okay. We had some new technology installed, new software, and we got to test it out and run it to its full potential on Easter Sunday. And it was absolutely incredible. It was so awesome to be able to work on Who Else with Allison and Edgar.
Yes.
They did a duet.
Oh, that was such a great moment.
Yeah, we actually had, we have a tool that can desaturate the color, and then we brought it back in an instrumental during that song.
That's a great effect.
On top of that, we had our A-team running cameras. They did a phenomenal job. So that whole song just came together so well. It felt so intentional, and it was really, really a beautiful moment.
It really was.
One of my favorite moments for sure.
Oh, for sure, yeah. So that was experienced online as well as in the park at Menlo Park campus. For those that don't speak technology or video, desaturating means
with no color. So we
Yes.
took the color out. It was just black and white.
Yep.
And then at a certain point in the song, we slowly brought it back in.
Awesome.
And it was just a beautiful moment.
That's so great, man.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on Easter Sunday.
Yep.
We tried to not make the services like super crazy so that if someone was to come back the next week and they'd be like, oh, this is completely different than what we
is
just
this place?
experienced.
This is a bait and switch.
Yeah, exactly. But you had a lot of things that you're managing, a lot of teams that you're managing. What was it like leading that production team? And maybe share a story of how a proud papa you were for that team.
Oh man, I'm so proud of them because they've grown a lot. I ask a lot of them, and I basically tell them we're not just coming in just point a camera at people.
Yeah.
Right, we're worshiping too. We're an extension of the worship experience, and just helping them to understand that and having them carry that weight is important, because then they understand that every shot that they capture actually matters.
That's great.
And it means something. And so that they really, really came through on Easter.
Awesome.
After I had shared that with them, they really showed the effort behind every shot, the intention behind every shot, the creativity that they showed. They set the bar to a whole nother level, and I was really, really proud of them for that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great, man. And for those that are like, man, those weren't professional videographers. They must have
No.
some experience with cameras and stuff beforehand. It's kind of crazy, but some of the team doesn't. And
Yeah.
Harold and Ben, they work a lot on coaching people up, teaching
Yep.
them how to use equipment. And so if this is something that you're interested in,
Yeah.
maybe you are trying to get into, and maybe like me, had never held a broadcast camera before volunteering with our team. They make it very easy, and as you can tell by Harold's just gentleness in nature, he's someone that you want coaching you along in this process.
And actually, we have someone who served on Easter that just joined our team about 2 to 3 weeks ago.
That's
and
so cool.
she actually just started her journey with Jesus.
Wow.
And her name is Leslie. She's okay with me sharing this. I know that for
Awesome.
a fact. She is just an incredible, loving, caring person, and she just jumped in. She wanted to serve on Easter. She was ready. You would have never known that she was a
she
volunteer.
did great.
And
Amazing.
that she just started. It was incredible.
Cool. Harold, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you,
All
Mark.
right, let's
Appreciate
talk to our next guest. Josh, welcome.
What's up, man?
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, full disclosure, I did not prep anyone about this little time that we're having together. So this is people's like reaction and like honest answers to share an Easter highlight with us. What campus were you at? What were you doing there? What was a fun thing from that day?
Yeah, I mean, I was just about to make a cup of coffee, and you're like, dude, you have 5 minutes? I was like, yeah, am I in trouble? And you're like, no, let's talk Easter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at the Saratoga campus.
Okay.
I serve as the campus pastor over there. So much good stuff. I mean, I have young kids. I have 2 daughters, 5 and 8.
Yeah.
So for them, they're like, it was so fun. Bounce houses, face painting, balloon artists, popcorn, cotton
It's like a
candy,
carnival.
s'mores. And then we also like shout out to our student director, Hannah, just like
Yeah.
last minute had this idea of let's hide hundreds of like little Jesus statues around campus and not tell anybody. And then all these kids were like, I found a Jesus. What's that mean? You get a giant Easter bunny. So like, just random. It was just so fun.
Yeah.
It was such a fun environment. And then I think like for me, the highlights would be, we just had so many people from our neighborhood come.
Yeah.
Like, and I would get to know them and their story a little bit. And the question I always ask is like, hey, how did you find Menlo? Did someone invite you? And I would say 9 out of 10 people that I met said, hey, we don't go to church. We don't have a history with church. We just, a friend invited us. This is all new to us.
Wow.
So a lot of our Easter friends that joined us
That's amazing.
have no connection to church or Jesus at all. And they just explored it. And it was awesome. I think the other highlight for me was in our service, we showed this testimony video of a student named Jaden.
Yes.
And it's from our Saratoga campus. And it's really like a 4-month journey of him making a decision to follow Jesus, his baptism, what he's doing on his local high school. And so like when we showed that story, people at our campus like stood up, were cheering, clapping, crying. I've seen it like 5 times and I get emotional every time.
For sure.
And like I get emotional just because like the Lord is doing such a good work in his life and at such a fast speed that our whole team is just like only God could do like what he's doing in Jaden's life. And then we just had a ton of people. Like we had to put chairs out in places that chairs have never existed on our campus before.
That's amazing.
We had to dust off chairs that were in closets we didn't even know existed just because so many people came. And dude, it was so fun.
That's great. I got the pleasure of trying to capture Jaden's story for that video. And there are times where I'm with people and it's like, okay, kind of have to work hard with questions or like how comfortable are they in front of the camera. We're going to ask some like deeply personal questions about their faith journey and things that they're struggling with and what God is doing in their life. He was ready to preach a sermon.
Yeah.
He sat down and he just went, and I was like, this is amazing, the work that God is doing. And then Jubilee from our team is just a wizard when it comes to telling stories and all the videography part. So I didn't actually see the video until a couple days prior to it.
Yeah.
So I had an idea of what it would look like in my mind based on the conversation that we had. And when it actually came to life, it was like, wow, that was
so
insanely
good.
cool.
And I also just think like that's a good story that represents like what God is doing at Menlo Church as far as like so many cool stories are coming out of next gen, like students and kids and what God is doing, not just on our campuses, but like in our communities. And so I think it captures this heart of like what's happening at Menlo Church. A lot of it points to what Brett and Joan and Missy and like our campus directors are doing to invest into students. And it was so awesome, man.
Awesome. So for someone that might have joined you for the first time that somehow miraculously found this podcast as well, what's happening this Sunday? What times is it happening? And all of that kind of stuff.
Yep. I mean, join us at any of our campuses or online, but I think you should come to Saratoga.
Hot take.
We have two services, 8:30 and 10. We're starting a brand new series that I'm really excited about called Weird Church. And so like if someone's a first-time guest to a church and they experience like, why are we singing songs? And like, why are we talking about the Bible? What's communion? Like some of those big staples of what we believe could be very confusing.
And things that we just do without
things that we just do that we assume make sense.
Right.
So I'm excited because if someone came to Easter, heard the story of Jesus, the cross, the resurrection, and want to learn more, they can come back and hear some of those foundational things and ask the questions that they have and get resources to explore it for themselves. So like if someone is not yet a follower of Jesus or someone is a new follower of Jesus, this is the best time to join us at Saratoga at 8:30 or 10.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Matt Summers.
Mark Morinishi.
You're back on. We're reunited. Wait, we need to do one of these. Thank you.
So good.
Mountain View was popping over this last Easter break. Let's start with Good Friday.
Yeah.
Because you were the campus that hosted not one service, but two services for Good Friday.
Yeah.
That for me was probably one of, if not my favorite service of the year that we do. And so what's a story or a highlight from there? And then we'll jump into Easter.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say, we had a Good Friday service. Let me back up. Holy Week is pretty personal and precious to me as a person. There's something about the Lenten season that is really significant. And so for me, like, I want to invite other people into that process of what it feels like to go through the ups and downs, through the loss, lament, and celebration. And I've said this before, but we can't have all of the beauty of Easter and all of the joy that comes from that day without first going through the reality of Good Friday. And so when we had a service last year at Mountain View, I think we're kind of asking the question, like, is this sort of in our future? Like, and every year we'll decide to do something different. But it was so packed out that we needed to do two services. So this year we did a 5:30 and a 7. And I mean, it was full at both services, which was awesome. And I'll just say, I think people are sort of drawn to a space where they can show up with all of their pain and all of their challenges. And if they can do that in a church setting and in a context that provides some spiritual connection, I think they're naturally going to be drawn to that. So
Yeah, for sure.
Highlight from Good Friday was just seeing the room full with people who, again, it's a somber service. You're seated for the duration of the service, but I could tell that sort of spiritually and emotionally something was transpiring within people. And what I loved was we participated in communion together. And this was one of those instances where we've been using the pre-filled elements post-COVID for a long time. That's the juice on one side, unleavened bread on the other. I think they're sort of referred to around here as the savior shooters, I think, because of how they look. But we wanted to kind of mark that moment with something of a little bit more significance. So we returned to the intinction process, which is actually part of our history, which is, a piece of unleavened bread and a chalice, and you dip and consume. And by far people, again, both are significant, but people sort of participated in that sacrament in a different way and practiced it a different way that felt like a more tactile experience. And so just seeing folks ready to receive and participate in that sacrament together was really encouraging. I loved that.
It was.
It was a precious evening. And the other thing I'll say too is that we are a multi-site church, which I love, and yet my experience as a campus pastor is very campus-centric. So I forget how many faces and souls are connected to what we do. It hasn't been since Menlo 150, or maybe the For the Bay 5K, but we rarely all get together. So the idea that we can have some options to remind ourselves of the body of believers that represent the Bay Area was that's just powerful to me and powerful to us, and I think many ways as staff members.
Yeah, dude. I resonate with that a lot because one of my takeaways from that night was the excitement I felt about seeing all my friends from all my different campuses there, but it being a somber night and this tension of like, there's people hanging out in between services that are like, hey, how you been? How you doing? Checking in. And then there's other people walking in to a somber service and like a tension there. So
it's, I mean, let's just call it what it is. It's kind of Last Supper-ish, you know, like it wasn't like some disciples had no idea that was the Last Supper. They just thought it was normal supper with the guys, right? So they're showing up, they're high-fiving, oh, it's dinner tonight, this is awesome, Passover, it's going to be great. And then Jesus is like, it's game over after this. So like, well, what does this mean?
Is it going to be me?
Yeah, is it going to be me? They were singing in sync together, asking, is it going to be me? You know, but just awkward, like it went from Passover supper to awkward supper very quickly. And so there was this tension. I think even like just putting myself in the sandals of the disciples that evening, I wonder how many of them were like, okay, so we had dinner, now we're going to go pray or something. Like how many of them were kind of thinking like, can this night still be saved? Like, is this going to be okay? You know? And I think we show up with all of that when we're in a space, in a setting like that, rekindling and remembering what people might be going through. And then just everybody's carrying their own stuff into that space, which church ought to be the place where you can bring all of those feelings at the same time. And so often we frame it up as a joyful, experience, which it ought to be for the soul. But at the same time, it feels like there's no room to reconcile what's going on internally. And the fact that we made space for that intentionally, I think is important.
Absolutely. And it really paints the landscape, like you said, for the celebration that we get to experience on Sunday. And so tell me about these bobas, man.
Okay. So, I've been asked before, what are you most proud of at Mountain View? And I would say for us, like, especially as a staff, the spirit of hospitality is very high. We want people to feel welcomed in a myriad of ways. And one of the ways you can do that is by providing something that's sort of familiar or a surprise and delight thing. Like either one of those can work. And so we were thinking for Easter, like, okay, what do we do? We know we're going to have a bunch of folks showing up. It is a special day. We can't do a celebration all the time, but what's a way to celebrate that would be unique? So, we've done like breakfast tacos, or we've done like churros, or like a coffee cart or something. And the last year that I have spent with students at Mountain View, I have been informed, read in, briefed, and like my knowledge of boba tea has expanded so much. Really. I mean, I'm not going to call myself a boba connoisseur, but I run in a circle with like enough with enough boba experts where I'm catching knowledge from them. So we just kind of had this moment, like, what about boba? What about boba tea? Like, what would it look like to do that at the campus? And I was like, that sounds great. So
let's do it.
We had one of our staffers, she started an Excel spreadsheet and called like 7 different boba places. Like, and we were trying to find the best combination between greatest options, like for the value. And we landed with this company called Boba Bliss in Mountain View. And they showed up so well. I mean, they offered 3 different types of boba. They offered like a 2 milk based, and then like a standard tea. And I just thought they were going to like shrink wrap the top of them and just put them out in coolers. They were making it fresh. And then when like the lines were low, they would prep like only 6 of them. So people like, they didn't want anything sitting for too long. So they showed up, like they had all of the coolers and things ready to go. The guys were in there, with the cup, adding the boba and like the syrup on the inside before pouring it. Like it was it was cool, and they did a great
Awesome.
job, and it was really good value.
Yeah.
We ordered 600, which
Such a wild
I
amount.
thought would have been enough, and it was not.
Really?
Yeah, we were nearly cleaned out by
Wow.
the start of the 11:30 service, and by the end of the 11:30 service, there were 4 left on a table, and those 4 went. But
Amazing.
at the 8:30 service, I was in the room at Easter closing things up, and I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna have an Easter egg hunt after the 11:30, but right now our friends from Boba Bliss are out on the patio." And I saw, if you were like under the age of 18, I saw jaws open like this, and then
Just a stampede of people running out.
and I was like, "Before you go, receive this blessing."
And they're like, nope, this boba. I'm out of
The
here.
boba blessing. I heard like shuffling as like people are trying to pray, and then as soon as I said amen, it was like the starting gun went off, and like
so
I heard the panic bars of the doors are slamming and being thrown open, and it was like this exodus, and people just formed up ranks and took their boba. But I loved it because we wanted something that people could grab and then like hang out with their family, like
dude,
talk
that's so good.
or bring into the service at the next services. Like it was a portable, pleasurable experience that people really liked.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and highly relatable too. For
sure.
I mean, I just feel like the Bay Area sort of runs on boba in a lot of ways. Like way more like, again, like maybe New York, Seattle, like big coffee culture. You know, we'll just drink the worst coffee. Coming from New York, like it's got to be 7-Eleven. Like there's so much bad coffee out there that we're just consuming all the time. And I feel like the Bay Area is like, no, boba. Like boba's our thing, and it was fun.
Awesome. Any other highlights you want to share?
Yeah, I'll just say, you know, after Easter, this is just yesterday, I got an email from a dad who reached out to me, and he sent me a photo of his family, and he's like, "Hey, I don't know if you remember us. We came to church a couple months ago. We've been trying to get connected to a faith community, figuring things out. You gave my son a high five a couple months ago out on the patio because it was like 40 degrees and he was wearing shorts and Crocs." And I was like, this is like my people right here. I'm like, "You're awesome, dude." So yeah, just said what's up to him. And he's like, "Anyway, like my son really liked coming to Menlo Mountain View. We've been having a good time as a family. And he's interested, and we think he's ready to have a conversation around baptism." And I was
Wow,
like, "That's
dude.
so cool. Like
That's
he's
amazing.
9 years old, like just kind of ready to make that move."
Yeah.
So we're going to set up a conversation, talk that out. But, you know, to see people, even young people especially, bring some intentionality to their spiritual walk. Like there's so many other things when you're 9, you know, you're not overthinking anything.
No.
You know, it's kind of like, hey, what school assignments are due? How much screen time do I have? What can I do in world building in Minecraft or Roblox? Like there's so many things that so many other things you could be completely preoccupied with. And the fact that, you know, this 9-year-old's having conversations with his dad about like, hey, like what's the value of my soul? How can I get more connected to Jesus? What does it mean to be a part of a church? What does it mean to be a believer? Like those are just wise questions. That's something I think that the Spirit can only do.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep. Junior's here, everybody.
What is up, everybody?
San Mateo worship leader, Junior.
Yeah.
We were chatting a little bit in the office. I didn't want to spoil anything for myself because part of the joy that I get of talking to other people at different campuses is hearing stories for the first time.
Yeah.
But you're sharing about some highlights already. So what was going on at San Mateo for Easter?
Dude, Easter was so fun. First of all, it was so crowded in the best possible way. We had so many people.
Yeah.
And it was just good to see so many people in our lobby, in our auditorium. I have 2 highlights. I think a moment that stands out to me is at the end of Phil's message, which is a great message, by the way. Shout out, Phil.
Don't gas him up. He doesn't need that. He doesn't need that.
Don't worry, dude. I'm really good at bringing him back down to earth, too. Yeah.
Okay.
He must think of me that was, God, Junior's the guy who helps out.
Yeah.
But at the end of his message, when he goes into Jesus paid it all, which I was thinking a lot about. You and I were part of the team that really thought through Easter, and we talked a lot about that moment. If that was going to be, you know, as creatives, I feel like we tend to want to overdo things at times. And I think we had a discussion that maybe it needed to be maybe a little bit more but then in the moment, and even in the 8:30 service, the simplicity of just the church singing together and declaring after an Easter message. Yeah, he did pay it all. And and then going into the bridge, the response. oh, praise the one who paid my debt. I think it was so powerful. And it was just such a beautiful moment for me to realize that we could do all the planning in the world. We can have the lights and the music to perfection. And then it doesn't beat a room full of people who believe that Jesus saved them, singing it together and declaring it. It was so powerful.
Yep.
And, me and a couple of the singers in San Mateo, we backed away from the mic and kind of just let the church take it. And, I encouraged our lobby and our overflow room to sing it too, and got feedback that they were all singing. I'm like, yeah, let's go. It was great.
Dude, what a moment that was.
It was such a moment, yeah. I took a step back and I'm like, yep. This is what the church is all about. Which I think, obviously, there's such space for creativity and all the stuff that we get to do, and which I really love. I love being a part of the team that plans it. Yeah. But it goes to show that it's just people responding to God. I think more than anything. So all the creative stuff we can do is just really, really just an outlet to get people to connect to their Savior. Yeah. And once that's happening, then we're kind of just hanging out in the background. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to leak something right now. First time that people are going to hear this, but we are jumping into a series called Weird Church starting this weekend.
I knew that. No,
and the first weekend is going to be about worship.
Oh, yeah, dude. I'm so ready for it. Yeah, I read a little bit about it, but Christian karaoke.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Was it? Did I spoil the title?
Oh, yeah, but I mean, you heard it here first.
That's cool. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
It's going to be so good. Yeah. And we're bringing a throwback song.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're listening to this the week leading up to Sunday, try to figure out what the throwback is. It's going to be at the end of service.
Okay, cool. Yeah. What was your other highlight?
Oh, we had a choir, dude.
Yeah.
Well, if you've been to San Mateo campus, our stage is probably about this big, where Mark and I are.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Which is really small, which is really great. It really makes my job a lot easier because it only takes me about 6 people to make people think I do a great job of filling my entire team. Yeah. Shout out to my San Mateo team. You guys do great.
Dude, so good.
So I was nervous. I was like, okay, either there has to be a kind of a perfect amount of people who I can get up there that will fit on stage without it feeling like we're breaking the laws of safety. And so we had about 5 or 6. 6. One of the two, I can't remember well. And it's just, I just know everyone individually. And so them preparing beforehand and then hearing their desire to want to sing at our church to get to then do it and declaring some of these words. And I had so much feedback of people saying the choir inspired them to sing, and I did. There was definitely a lot more engagement. Of course, it's Easter, but just seeing people who they know. One of the highlights for me, Jerry Hom, which he's we hold dear at our campus. We love Jerry. He kind of helps lead our prayer team, and he's just really great. He's always praying for people and stuff. And just to see him like worshiping, hands raised, singing loud, singing songs that are like definitely out of his range, definitely out of my range, to be honest. And he still went for it. It was so inspiring. And then like Bridget, one of our students who I know that she sings with our students team, but she was up there on Sunday, and I saw a lot of her friends show up on that Sunday. And there was a portion of the song that I really loved where actually the choir doesn't sing. It's the middle song, Who Else? Just because we didn't want to do too much back and forth with the choir, so we had them step off, and then they came at the end of service. But they, like for example, Bridget ran to the front row, raised her hands and worshiped. She didn't need to be on stage worshiping. She just, and all her friends, it was amazing. So it was a big highlight for me,
Dude, that sounds amazing.
That team was so awesome, it was
so
good.
Fun.
I'm a little bit tired post Easter, as you can imagine.
I think we all are.
But yesterday I was like, oh yeah, it's Monday.
Awesome. Well, Junior, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
And you're our last guest for today. So,
nice.
Again, like if you're watching this and you know that we have a series coming up where we're doing this for people that don't normally experience church, like this is a great opportunity for you to bring friends or family or coworkers, teammates, and just say, hey, will you sit with me at church? Because we're talking about things at a very basic level, and we're planning this service for you. And so we'd love to encourage you all as you're listening to this to pray about that. Pray for somebody you might have come to your mind. If you need help with that, you can text our team, 650-600-0402. Have a great week, everybody.
Have a great week.